information. What crime did Mahmoud Khalil commit to warrant his arrest, detention, and the potential revocation of his green card?
Let me tell you something. I went face down the angry mob at Columbia at the height of that stuff, when the pro-Palestinian, pro-Hamas protesters were there. I'm telling you, this is my own observation, not something I read in a newspaper. It was dangerous. I met with Jewish students before we went to campus who were holed away off campus because they were instructed by the administration not to come to class, which they paid for fear of their physical safety. The administrators there refused to take control of that campus. They refused to allow the PD to come, the police department to come in and take control, and it turned into a chaos. The president has since been removed, and now they got the same problem again. Columbia and other universities, they have to keep control of campus. The first responsibility of an administration is ensuring the safety of the students who are paying tuition to be there, for crying out loud. This madness has to stop. We have to get control of it.
The question was, what crime did Mahmoud Khalil commit to warrant his arrest, detention, and potential revocation of his green card? It's a question Mike Johnson was having some trouble answering without the assumptions, empty accusations, and anger.
This guy apparently was a mastermind of those very things, when the gnashing of teeth and the ripping of clothes and the people screaming at me, wanting to rip me limb from limb because I was there talking about moral clarity and how there's a right and a wrong. They were doing that. They disrupted the campus. They were threatening physical violence to their fellow students. If you're on a student visa, I'm going to say this clearly. If you are on a student visa and you're in America and you're an aspiring young terrorist who wants to prey upon your Jewish classmates, you're going home. We're going to arrest your tail and we're going to send you home where you belong. And this is just getting started. So, look, I appreciate free speech. I used to defend it in courts, but this is far beyond the pale of that. When you are threatening your classmates and spewing anti-Semitism and all this hatred, it's enough. And I think the American people understand that. They're supporting it, and I'm glad we have a president who's strong enough to lay down the law.
It should be pretty easy to cite the laws that the president is laying down for the Speaker of the House to piggyback off of, other than his personal assessment of how nasty he felt protests were in response to our tax dollars going to the targeted killing of tens of thousands of innocent Palestinians. And maybe those laws and evidence are coming, but so far, we're seeing flailing and more empty accusations.
He's a virulent anti-Semite. He came here on a student visa. He's paid by a terrorist organization that beheads babies.
What evidence do you have?
That beheads babies.
Wait.
I have evidence.
So I'm sorry, just to be clear, you're alleging that he's paid by
He's a paid protester.
By who?
Well, I didn't ask my intelligence division exactly who paid for him, but he's being paid by. He's being paid.
That's a pretty explosive allegation. Who is he being paid by?
Can I ask you a question?
No, you said you had
really
evidence. Who is he being paid by?
He's being paid by organizations that are anti-American, that are engaged in nefarious activities. I don't ask my intelligence division to give me...
Then don't come on national TV and say on things. Don't come on national TV.
Do you know who he's being paid by?
I don't, and I'm not alleging that he's being paid.
Are you okay with what he's doing?
I'm not alleging he's being paid by because I don't know.
Are you okay with anti-Semitism?
You are coming on national TV and using this platform
Jewish
to spread
students?
things. No, I'm
not.
not.
Are you okay with hate speech?
Don't make this about that. Make it about the fact that
that's exactly what it's about.
That you talk louder doesn't mean anything. You're making this about... You are saying things on national TV that you cannot corroborate. That is irresponsible, and you should not come and use
why don't you ask the NYPD Intelligence Bureau?
Well,
why don't you ask the FBI and the CIA?
Because I don't speak to them.
They know exactly what's going on.
If there's evidence, bring it out.
Hold on. I'm going to ask one more time. Do you know for a fact that he is being paid by another entity, especially a terrorist organization? Can you state that as a fact?
I can state with the fact that he is being paid, as the other professional protesters are being paid, by anti-American organizations that are engaged in nefarious activities.
So if that allegation...
That I can confirm.
Okay, so Bruce, I'm just going to say it right here. You've just made that claim. There's no evidence that I know of. There's no evidence that you've provided.
Well, he can sue me then.
And I mean...
And then we'll come out in court.
He's free to do whatever he wants. But the United States government has not made that allegation. They have not made charges against him on that front.
Of course they made that allegation. That's why he's being...
No, they haven't.
These guys are so eager to get going on their lifelong dreams of arresting and jailing people that they don't agree with and expose the horrors of our foreign policy in Gaza, they're putting the fascist cart before the fascist horse. They're ready to claim any of their targets are in violation of any law that they can use to silence anyone that they want. It's where Marco Rubio comes in to help them out.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio approved of a use of a legal provision, a rare one, Wolf, to initiate this arrest and detaining not only of Khalil, but also of another activist. Now, this is a legal provision that is in immigration law. Essentially, it gives authority to the Secretary of State if they find that someone is deemed to be a threat to U.S. foreign policy. Now, in this case, it seems to be the argument that the government is making for the arrest of this activist. But Wolf, it is an extraordinary escalation of the immigration crackdown by this administration. We know what provision in the law they're using to detain this activist, but what evidence do they have? And ultimately, it'll be a judge who will have to decide, is this really free speech, or was there support of a terrorist organization? Those are some of the questions we anticipate are going to be raised over the course of these proceedings.
Does the Trump administration, specifically the Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who ordered his deportation, do they have evidence that Khalil was threatening Jewish students at Columbia University?
And that's exactly what we anticipate hearing more about tomorrow during the hearing. So far, they have not provided what evidence that they are using to hold him.
It gives authority to the Secretary of State to arrest them if they find that someone is deemed to be a threat to U.S. foreign policy. And by deem, they mean whatever anyone in the position of power considers to be a threat. And we already know how many things that this White House cooks up that end up having no basis in reality. They're going to have to come up with some evidence to back up the claims of an actual threat that's better than, we don't like what he says. And in true MAGA form, the press secretary took the opportunity to paint Khalil as negatively as possible from her podium so that she could convince as much of the public as she could of his viciousness.
Khalil, does the administration believe that it needs to charge a green card holder with a crime to be eligible for deportation?
Well, in fact, Secretary Rubio reserves the right to revoke the visa of Mahmoud Khalil, and I'm glad you brought this up. Mahmoud Khalil was an individual who was given the privilege of coming to this country to study at one of our nation's finest universities and colleges. And he took advantage of that opportunity, of that privilege, by siding with terrorists, Hamas terrorists who have killed innocent men, women, and children. This is an individual who organized group protests that not only disrupted college campus classes and harassed Jewish American students and made them feel unsafe on their own college campus, but also distributed pro-Hamas propaganda, flyers with the logo of Hamas. That is what the behavior and activity that this individual engaged in. And I have those flyers on my desk. They were provided to me by the Department of Homeland Security. I thought about bringing them into this briefing room to share with all of you, but I didn't think it was worth the dignity of this room to bring that pro-Hamas propaganda. But that's what this individual distributed on the campus of Columbia University. We have a zero-tolerance policy for siding with terrorists, period.
She has all the pro-Hamas propaganda sitting on her desk that came from a hyper-MAGA-influenced Department of Homeland Security. But she thought it was too disgusting to take to the press briefing where people would be asking for evidence of her claims. Listen, this is why it's important for people in positions of power to not be caught lying to the extreme degree that this president and his entire movement have been. There's absolutely no reason to believe much of anything that they say after his entire political existence is based on lies, has been promoted by even more lies, and operates under the claim that what we experience isn't real. If she brings those flyers tomorrow, there's no reason to believe that they didn't produce them themselves. That's how shattered their credibility really is. The thought that they can openly present what they have is constitutional even has one of the most anti-immigrant conservatives questioning their attachment to the Constitution. So here's Ann Coulter's thoughts. There's almost no one I don't want to deport. But unless they've committed a crime, isn't this a violation of the First Amendment?